Hello, friends. Have you ever felt like you were being watched? Seen something that defies logic? Today on our channel, a selection of the creepiest and most mysterious stories. Each one of them is someone's real life experience. Are you ready? Then let's go. Story 1. Faith in Healing. An old proverb says, marriage is not a disaster, but being married is not a disaster either. And it seems that this was written about Maria. Her family life with her husband turned into a series of endless quarrels. They argued over nothing, over trifles, and each time it almost came to divorce. At first, it seemed like a normal family crisis, but soon Maria realized that something was wrong. They lived with her husband's mother, and here's what was strange. Her husband was healthy. Her mother-in-law was in a great mood, but Maria began to fade away before their eyes. She was losing weight, losing strength, couldn't get up in the morning, and her mood was just terrible. One day, while walking around her workplace, she met a strange woman. The woman looked at Maria and, as if forgetting everything, suddenly asked, "Do you know that you are cursed?" Maria laughed, dismissed it as old wives' tales, and walked on. The woman just shook her head sadly. A couple of weeks later, the situation repeated itself. Another stranger on the street also spoke about a strong curse and offered help. Maria refused again, but it made her think. Two complete strangers, independently of each other, saying the same thing. Maria shared this with her mother, who advised her to go to church. On her next day off, Maria decided to go to church. Before she left, her mother-in-law asked her where she was going. Maria, without knowing why, lied and said she had been called to work. At the church, Maria felt ill. Her legs gave way, her head spun, and her ears rang. She barely made it outside and sat down on a bench, feeling like she was about to pass out. Just then, a woman was walking by. When she saw Maria, she rushed into the church and brought out a bottle of holy water. "Drink this," she said, "and wash your face. You look terrible." Maria took the bottle, but the water seemed scalding hot, like boiling water. With difficulty, she took a few sips, caught her breath, and went back into the church. The situation repeated itself a couple more times. With each new attempt, it became easier for her. After the service, Maria returned home, not forgetting to take the holy water with her. She began to drink it constantly and wash her face with it. She started going to church again, and gradually her health improved. Her strength had returned, she stopped losing weight, and a smile reappeared on her face. But with her mother-in-law, everything was the opposite. After Maria went to the temple, she almost stopped leaving her room. She began to complain about her health and visit doctors, but they found nothing serious. Maria's relationship with her husband improved. They decided to rent an apartment and start living separately. It seemed to be for the best. After all, the main thing is to believe in your healing and ask for help from higher powers. Story 2. The Viper. It was a hot summer. Grandma went to the forest to get berries when suddenly she heard a bird cry. When she came closer, she saw a large black viper that was getting closer to the nest with eggs. The quail desperately swooped at the snake, but could do nothing. The grandmother decided to help the bird and threw the viper away with her beak. In a second, the snake came to its senses and crawled right at her. Grandma fought back as hard as she could until she lost consciousness from fear and fatigue. When she woke up, she saw herself lying on the ground. There was a dead viper lying next to her, and the same quail was circling above her, holding a green ring in its beak. The bird dropped it into Grandma's palm. Grandmother took the ring. It was woven from stalks of grass. When she put the ring on her little finger, Grandma immediately felt a surge of strength. When she got home, she had her first real meal in 6 months. A month later, she was completely healthy and looked 10 years younger. One envious neighbor began to spread rumors that her grandmother was a witch. It became impossible to stay in the village, and her son took her back to the city, where she lived to the age of 95. The ring dried up and crumbled into dust, and the gossipy neighbor's mouth twisted. No doctors or money could help her. Story 3. Dead Man Without Shoes. This is a very strange story, but it happened to my family. My great-grandfather had a son who died, who drank a lot. My great-grandfather buried him in a new suit, but he didn't have enough money for new shoes. He decided that this would do, so he buried his son without shoes. 3 years later, my son began to appear in my grandmother's dreams. He was swearing, complaining that it was very cold and uncomfortable for him to walk there, that his feet were getting stiff. These dreams tormented my grandmother for several months. She did not know that great-grandfather buried his son without shoes, and when she found out, she made a scandal. But great-grandfather only waved it off. It's too late. A couple months later, my grandfather was already sick. Before his funeral, we put his shoes in his coffin to give them to his great-grandfather's son. From then on, the dream stopped. Story 4. Strange Visitor. One night I couldn't sleep at all. There was a strong wind outside and the branches were banging on the windows. I tossed and turned, but my eyes wouldn't close. At some point I was facing the wall, and then I heard a child whisper, "Turn around, someone's coming to see you." I literally froze. I was the only child in the family, and I heard that voice clearly. Slowly turning around, I glanced at the doorway. There stood an eerie, shaggy, small figure. It swayed and walked slowly toward me in small steps. I was speechless and instantly hid under the blanket. A second later, I cautiously peeked out. The figure was still there. In a panic, I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents. But as it always happens, when we returned, no one was in the room. In the morning, my parents laughed that it was my grandmother. But my grandmother is not as tall as a stool. I still don't know what it was. It gives me goosebumps when I write this. I don't think it was sleep paralysis. I've experienced it, and I know what it is. There were all sorts of abnormal things going on in that house all the time. That's why I don't like to sleep in it. It always feels like someone is watching me. I have never had that feeling in other houses. Story 5. Last Goodbye. A month ago, my wife's grandfather died. At the time, he was in a coma, you could say between life and death. During the night, I woke up to go to the bathroom and saw a distinct black silhouette in the corner of the room. He looked like my grandfather and just stared at me silently. I tried to convince myself that it was a glitch or a mirage, but I just clenched my will into a fist and went to the bathroom. When I came back, no one was there. At that moment, I realized that Grandpa was dead. The next day, we found out that he had indeed passed away. That same night, my wife's grandmother had a dream about him. He was saying goodbye and said that on January 12th, he would get up on his feet and go. And my mom dreamed he was packing up his things and putting them in the car. When my mom asked, "Where are you going?" he replied, "There, but it's too early for you to know. After a few days of fussing with the funeral, we were told the date, January 12th, the very day he said he would get back on his feet. What that was, I don't know. Story 6. Voice and Vapor. This happened to me in 2003, and I still don't have an explanation for it. I was 15 years old at the time, and I went camping with my sister and her acquaintances. I'll tell you right away that I didn't drink alcohol or anything else. The only thing I associate this story with is a cemetery that was nearby. There was no restroom in the nature, so my sister and I went through it several times a day. On the way back, my sister and I were walking alone. At some point, I heard someone nearby talking. The voice was male, very inaudible, as if someone was mumbling a prayer in an unknown language. I looked around, but there was no one around. We were alone. I asked my sister if she could hear. She just laughed and said I should go to the psych ward. We walked on, and the voice didn't stop. Soon, I noticed that steam was rising from the ground and all surfaces, like over wells in winter. It was everywhere. I asked my sister again if she could see. Again, she answered that she saw nothing, and again she joked about the asylum. This went on, and even at my parents' store. I asked my dad why there was steam everywhere, but he said he couldn't see anything. That's when I really started to feel uneasy. I was the only one hearing the voice, the only one seeing the vapor. This went on for about a week. I would go to school, sit in class, and all around me was this voice and vapor. I can't say I was really scared, rather I was creepy and curious. I told my mom. She advised me to go to church, but I didn't go. And then it ended as suddenly as it had begun. I never heard that voice or saw that couple again. I recently asked my mom and sister if they remembered the story, and they confirmed that they did. It's not a hallucination because it can't just show up, last a week, and just as suddenly disappear. I want to go to that place this summer. I don't know what that will do, but this story still haunts me. I never found an explanation for what the voice was or where the vapor came from. I hope these stories have made you think about the thin line between our world and something unknown. Be attentive, listen to your sensations, and always remember that the world around us is much more mysterious than it seems. Don't forget to put a like, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell not to miss new mystery stories. Thanks for watching, and see you soon